Let's take a step back and check out PlayStation's business strategy. What in the world, or what exactly is going on with them? And I think with the release of Concord, it's starting to show what their business strategy may need or is lacking. Welcome to the Video Game Fight School channel. We're going to take a very close look at this because I think it's very important that we take, in my opinion anyways, a fine comb as quickly as we can and quickly run through PlayStation's business strategy for the last few years. Seeing how Concord has come out has basically not appealed to anybody, both on the PlayStation and the PC side. Even shout out to Astro Cyborg, one of my longtime audience members, has been posting the number in terms of the top sales of this particular game. The game is not doing well. On PlayStation, it's number 44 on the best-selling list. In Europe, according to this person, Fabregas here, they're saying it's over, it's basically around 160 in terms of position. That is really bad. The reason I'm highlighting this is because we know that there are at least 10 more of these coming. I made this video where I mentioned this, and some people said, well, didn't they decide that they were going to cancel about 6 of them? I don't see that anywhere. What I see is that half of them have been delayed. If you look at this article from Video Games Chronicle, it says Sony confirms it's delayed half of its 12 planned live service games. If we go to The Verge basically says and comments it this way: Sony pushes back its live service game ambitions. The company says it now expects to release 6 live service titles by March 2026, half what it previously planned. So apparently it was because of mixed levels of success, all kinds of stuff with Destiny developer and so on and so forth, but they're pushing them back. Another article here on Games Hub says Sony has delayed half of its upcoming live service games. Sony planned to release 12 live service games by March 2026. They were going to drop close to 4 a year. That's wild. If you continue to look at more and more articles, you keep seeing that this was the trend, that they only decided to slow this thing down. Hence, with the unveiling of Concord, you can bet that more of them are in the cooker and they're still going to be dropping them. So this is very important. Seeing how most PlayStation audience members, their appetite is for the single player titles and not necessarily the live service titles coming from PlayStation themselves. Now, in terms of other live service games, what's really interesting is a lot of the PlayStation players themselves actually do play these other live service games, and they play them in droves. It's insane how much they actually do play them, because when you actually consider, how much, of these games a lot of folk are playing on the PlayStation side, it's actually quite interesting to see whenever you take a look at the charts. Because as we've seen from the data in the past few days, it's insane that, more of these games that are being played on PlayStation and even Xbox themselves are live service games. So one, I think PlayStation's strategy is trying to include a live service game in their mix to be able to come and probably make it on top of this list on their own platform. Sadly, most PlayStation players are not vibing with it. In fact, thanks to PC, Helldivers, even though the developers have almost tried to kill their own game, is still being carried. What's really rocking is Fortnite, Call of Duty, EA Sports games. You're going to see Grand Theft Auto, and as Grand Theft Auto 6 comes out, it's more than likely going to jump on the charts as well. And then when its live service elements are released, it's also going to sit on the chart, because that's kind of how these games work. Roblox, NBA, Minecraft, and First Descendant, so Apex Legends, and a lot of these other games that have already struck gold. This is why I think PlayStation wants to basically go in and stick with this live service thing for the long haul. So keep in mind, about 10 of these are probably still coming. Now, for PlayStation fans, if you're probably wondering what their single player, strategy is, I think this is more than likely known. Insomniac is going to be making the Wolverine game. In fact, we know that they're working on that right now, but you got to understand that these are very expensive games. So as much as PlayStation is cranking them out, or whatever Naughty Dog is making, or whatever Santa Monica is making, these 3 studios are basically the 3-pronged major approach. And so in taking that approach, they can still get their single player games. I think one of their strategy pieces is they're going to continue to money hack games. They're going to try to reach out to their partners in Asia. A lot of new developers and a lot of new development teams are starting to shine out there. I think they're going to reach out to them and try to money hack games, even with other publishers that they have relationships with, to kind of pad up their single player repertoire. But in reality, their efforts are 4x of the live service games. There's no doubt about that. In fact, if you really wanted to take a look at it, let's look at their budget as well and the way they've actually decided to shift majority of what it is that they're spending on. Reports were showing that PlayStation was wanting to spend about 60% of its budgets on live service games by around 2025, 2026. The numbers were slightly lower as single player games actually had the biggest budget, but apparently they decided that they wanted to move it to about 60% by their fiscal year 2025. However, like I said, they're not going to leave the single player games. They already have studios that are dedicated to them. I wonder why they canceled the Marvel Spider-Man live service game. Perhaps the development costs had just skyrocketed to high, skies, and they probably were like, man, there's just no way that a live service game that's on one platform is going to make any sense. In order for them to be able to recoup their costs, they would have had to launch that game day one on PC to be able to garner a lot more players that will come into the ecosystem, buy the base Spider-Man game, and then invest into the live service option, possibly sell skins and all that, which would have taken more development time, and then you'll probably be looking at possibly a $400 million game, which I just don't think anybody wants to deal with, on top of giving Disney all the money that you make at the end of the day. And so I think that Marvel Spider-Man live service game was probably out of somebody maybe, hyperventilating after seeing the bill and deciding, no, we're not going to go that route. So in my opinion, I think right now, Naughty Dog, Insomniac, and Santa Monica really need to bring their game. Naughty Dog right now is in the doghouse with their Last of Us shenanigans that they did for part 2. That was not a game that fans really loved. I was watching PlayStation fans very carefully at that time because I'd played The Last of Us Part 1, one of my favorite games actually. I played it on the PlayStation 4. I was so intrigued. I played it multiple times. And so when part 2 was coming out and all the drama was going on, I was watching. I was like, man, what are PlayStation fans going to do in this case? Because I wanted to play Ghost of Tsushima. Many of you remember that Ghost of Tsushima got bumped for this, Last of Us game. And at the end of the day, Last of Us Part 2 never really made the mark that it could have made if the developers had written a good story. They basically tried to, subvert everybody. Yeah, well, Rocksteady, I'm sure you guys learned a lesson. If none of you learned a lesson, make your hero look like a hero. I guess that's what it is. And then Insomniac also playing the shenanigans with Mary Jane, and making her this super journo, like weird, instead of having Silver Sable or even Yuri come in as strong characters. If they wanted to represent strong female characters, their game and their game world already had those characters established, being strong enough to be able to deal with Kraven, but they took little MJ and decided that they were going to make her OP, according to the creative director of the game. Well, I hope you can make it to 33 million copies, because that's not exactly why the first game made it that far. I think that dude caved to, the people in the studio just because he wanted to look cool. Don't do that. Control your classroom and make sure that they bring out a product that gamers actually like. So already you can see how things are kind of shaping up to be. What's Santa Monica going to bring out? Is it going to be another God of War game? Is it going to be a new IP? Can they afford to take a risk? These are questions that I'm sure that they've probably already asked. They've already answered, but expect to see a lot of live service games. PlayStation wants to strike gold. They cannot sit there and everybody else be farming content, making money on their own platform while they are just sitting there looking like, oh, what's going on here? And another thing I think that they'll need to basically do this is they need to let go of some of their corporate greed, because they all have it and they just can't divorce themselves from it. But you really got to let people just play your game without too many hurdles. PlayStation is just so hold it. You're not Nintendo. Learn, know your place, peasant. When you come to the PC platform, it's a very rough, weird place to be. It's not as, controlled as the console platform is. You got to realize that, man, once you drop it on PC, you're dropping your game on no man's land. And so the rules there are very different from what it is that you've been doing on console. And so if they don't adjust, this live service strategy may go all the way down to game number 9 before they actually figure out how to make money. Because now you got to fail. I'm sure they want to take the fail fast approach. They probably earmark maybe $1 billion or $2 billion for this endeavor. But man, it's still a lot of money. And I'm sure shareholders will be asking questions if they're not seeing any fruit, as time goes on. But let me hear your thoughts in the comment section. I really appreciate you guys' time and audience, and hopefully we'll talk pretty soon in another one. Tell me, what do you think about this PlayStation strategy? Do you like it? I'm sure most PlayStation players are not too fond of it, but, line got to go up. Thanks for watching. Peace out.